With a brand new DLC comes brand new playthroughs, and Crusader Kings 3 is definitely not in short supply of starting characters to choose from across both historical bookmarks of 867 and 1066. But with the Fate of Iberia DLC, we have a very focused geographical region, and that leaves only a handful of starting options on the table. In this video, I want to go over my top 10 picks for your first playthrough of the Fate of Iberia DLC. We'll talk through 867 first, then switch gears to talk about 1066. And I've roughly organized these as far as difficulty goes, from easy to hardest per historical bookmark. So for example, we'll talk about the easiest 867 playthroughs all the way through to the hardest ones, and then restart talking about the easiest 1066 to the hardest ones. You can jump ahead to any ruler that interests you the most by using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. And if you haven't yet picked up the Fate of Iberia DLC pack, you can use the link to my Nexus Store in the description and pinned comment. Nexus works directly with the developer to get you a Steam key, and also gives me a cut of every sale that works significantly towards helping to keep the channel alive, as well as my brand new puppy fed. But let's get started on my top 10 starting locations for the Fates of Iberia DLC. First up on our list is actually a Muslim character starting here in the Emirate of Baya. And this is a very fun one, and it's also an easier one. The game even recommends this as a starting one for you in the bookmark for 867. And Adamus here is pretty good because he already starts with his claim to the entire Emirate of Baya, and all you simply need to do is grab this location, and then after that, your Umayyad overlord will more often than not just simply give you this vassal to you. He'll just offer the vassal, and you'll have this nice chunk of land all complete. From there, it's just a matter of creating the Kingdom of Badajoz. Now, what's going to happen here is the Sultanate of al-Andalus is already beset on both sides by Asturias as well as internal struggles. And you should typically have, a dissolution event going on already. Because at this point in history, this is when the Taifas became a thing. So the Emirates will rename themselves to Taifas. You will no longer be a subject of the Sultanate of al-Andalus, and you will be an individual independent leader. This should all happen well before you can create the kingdom title, but you're more than capable of then expanding northward into Galicia, and even if you wanted to, get frisky and create the Portuguese culture. You yourself start as a Baranis, which is different than the entire southern portion of Iberia being Andalusian. So you can choose to stay as Baranis and put Baranis further into the conflict, or make that conversion into the newly redone culture of the Andalusians, which gives you a lot of different stuff. Tabletop Warriors has been redone, so now you can paint your Warhammer miniatures on the coast here of the western coast of Iberia. On top of that too, you start off with a really high stewardship, and your wife has a really high amount of intrigue. You will be using intrigue a lot in your playthrough of Fate of Iberia, even if you are not playing an intrigue-centered character, because fabricating hooks, revealing secrets, and dealing with those hooks is a huge part of how the actual clash and conflict itself works itself into the individual phases and catalysts. So it's a really, really great, strong starting character with a lot of awesome options. Our next 867 playthrough is in the Duke of Castille. Now you'll notice here that even though this says Castille, the actual Duchy of Castille itself is right here. So you start with a character that is in a pretty empowered position. Let's take a look here. So Rodrigo Dieguez has a lot of military, right? He's got a ton of martial, a ton of prowess, so he is a very strong combatant. But he starts with the claim to the Duchy of Castille, enabling him to really move south and have a ton of protection, because he's also the vassal of the King of Asturias. So the King of Asturias is going to be dealing with the Sultanate of al-Andalus, while you just kind of simply move south and slowly take things using the new struggle clash capability. You'll just eat each one of these individual counties up. You'll create them as a vassal, right? Because they become a vassal as part of this struggle clash. You'll further the Iberian struggle with catalysts, but by the time you finish and hit this mountain range, you can create the Kingdom of Castille, thus making you independent. And you already start with all the lands of the Duchy of Cantabria. So you have all this working for you, and it's a really great, strong playthrough to start out if you want to play through any of the Christian characters that are in the northernmost portion of Iberia. Sticking with our trend of Northern Iberian rulers, you can start as the King of Navarra. Now, this is a chance to play as the Basque people, and you start with a very unique circumstance. Because again, we've already talked about how al-Andalus is already under siege internally and externally. So you have the capability here to do a nice big land grab right in the early portions of the game that solidifies you a ton of land. And then from there, if you want to play as a Mos-Arabic character with a little bit more stability, you have, the nice thing is that if I look at this, the majority of this land is all Mos-Arabic. So you can actually grab all this land and then convert to that faith once you've built up enough piety. So you have that as a really cool way to jump into a possible playthrough of Mos-Arabic without going through any of these characters, which are the only characters in 867 that are Mos-Arabic. Otherwise, you have to make the conversion yourself. So Navarra has a really strong opportunity to start out and then start chipping away down into the Kingdom of Valencia and even butt up right against the Kingdom of Castille, which you can snatch up all of these same exact counties that we just talked about with the Duke of Castille. So this is a very interesting playthrough, but there is a little bit of a trick here too, right? Because you start already at the age of 57 and your player heir is in a bad position. So depending on how your roles work and everything like that, you might be up against a couple generations of struggle across your current ruler and their next ruler. So you kind of have to really set yourself up for success as best you can when you're playing as Navarra, because it is a little bit more challenging. You are more isolated. Even for a king status, you don't have a ton of soldiers. Even comparing yourself to this emirate right here, they have 1,500. So solidifying a really strong alliance with West Francia or even Italy is going to be crucial so that you can have a nice, easy, and strong southern expansion into al-Andalus. Curveball, we are not in Iberia anymore. I'm going to talk about Count Haesteinn in Montaigu. And this is an interesting one because it allows you to be an interloper into the whole struggle system, because he is probably the most equipped adventurer, right? He starts with 3,700 soldiers. So if we right click on Asturias and declare war, we have, there we go, Branching Adventure. We have a lot of really awesome capabilities here. And if I were to go into Asturias, I would definitely probably choose the Duchy of Galicia. This would give me Santiago as well as Astorga, which both have really cool buildings here. The Roman Walls of Lugo, as well as the Forum Brigantium, are two awesome things that you can kind of bring into your playthrough right at the start. And I think it's a really, really fun location. I could even declare war down here, Branching Adventure, and just choose a ton of different duchies to choose from, going all over the place. If you wanted to make Portugal, you could go over here into Burgathal. That's a terrible way to pronounce it. Or you could even just straight up take the Duchy of Cordoba. So I think the cool thing about this character is really the sky is the limit, you know, more or less, quote unquote. And you have the capability to pretty much infiltrate any portion of Iberia and become an interloper. And that kind of has a very different and very interesting way to kind of play through the struggle system that is going to be unique to pretty much any other start in the actual portion of Iberia. All right, our last character to talk about in 867 is the Sultanate of al-Andalus itself. This one is very challenging because you kind of have to deal with a lot of the situations you have to deal with when you're playing the Holy Roman Empire or the Byzantines. A lot of vassals want independence, and you're going to be spending, especially the beginning of the game, trying to solidify and end two wars, because these wars are going to be massive. Historically speaking, this is what kind of ended the Sultanate here and started the Taifas period, these individual kingdoms, more or less, these individual emirates around the southern portion of Iberia. So you have a lot to contend with. And in addition to that, your character's not that great. Your spouse, not that great. Your children, they're all right, but they're not amazing. Your primary heir here is not going to really, you know, do anything nuts. And it does depend on how everything rolls. He does have a good amount of learning, and learning is quite good depending upon what religion or culture you are in the south portion of Iberia, but it's very nice. You do start with CID, which is really cool. I'm sorry, I apologize if I mispronounced that. I think it's actually Said. But that allows you to do some fun decisions here as well. It is a very challenging playthrough, and it does really kind of test your ability to manage a lot of vassals, because as you can see, you have got quite a bit from vassals. Vassals, there we go. Looks like we got 25 vassals right now. And on top of that, if you lose, you just become this small little guy with his own claims, which is this stuff right here. That's all you have, which is Cordoba and Cabra, and that's it. So it's definitely a very challenging playthrough. It doesn't end if you lose the wars, and you can kind of piece your way back up. But you might be thinking, you know, why isn't any of these individual sheikdoms or counties challenging? Well, eventually all these become independent, and they all have a very drained amount of military, and you can gobble them up very, very, very fast as one count. So it's actually quite quick, quite easy to play one of these counts and eat up all the locations around you once the Sultanate has fallen apart. But definitely takes my vote for the hardest playthrough here in 867. Switching gears here into 1066, we have the Duke of Tulaytulah. It's that Duke right there. And let's take a look at this one, because it's a pretty fun one, and it's a really good, strong Muslim character to start off. You have probably the easiest and largest character in the southern region of Iberia at 3,200 total military strength. Your character himself has a good amount of stewardship. Again, this kind of depends upon your roles, and you do have a player heir that is, again, depending on the roles, not amazing, but at least he's there, and he'll hold the kingdom together as you transition towards the next 20 or 30 some odd years. But the cool thing here is you have the capability to expand here, here, into Cordoba, here, here, or here. And I don't know why my voice cracked when I did that. I'm a 34-year-old man. So if I click this, go to war with Struggle Clash, it eats up the entire thing. Same thing down here. Well, most of it. But Cordoba, look at that. Boom, takes out the whole thing, and you immediately have a massive production house for, taking a look down here, your income's going to increase, your levies are going to go up, your holding taxes, your development growth, and your piety, your monthly renown. It is an amazing building to get in the very early portion of the game. And you can get that right in your opening start. You can go over here as well and do a struggle clash and eat up this location. You can get this entire duchy over here as well. So you have a lot of really strong expansion points that will bring you all the way down south into the southernmost portion, or north up against Aragon and Navarra. So you have a lot of really good expansion and the ability to quickly secure Cordoba, which is an amazing playthrough here in 1066 if you want to be a Muslim character. Now, I've talked about the Duke of Portucale before, and he's a really fun character without the DLC. With the DLC, he gets even crazier. So looking at this character, we have one that, again, depending upon your roles, has a very high amount of intrigue. And we've talked about how intrigue is very crucial to the catalyst system of the struggle system. So you can fabricate hooks, you can take advantage of a lot of abilities to push that forward. And it's just a really good start because you are kind of well insulated, right? You're starting inside the kingdom of Galicia. You yourself are decently strong, but you can kind of eat up some of the smaller vassals using struggle clash stuff right here and kind of get a little bit stronger. You could even move south, which I wouldn't recommend out the gate because this guy is going to be harder than you. Or I'm sorry. Whoa. He's going to be stronger than you, as you can see. So really what this is going to be about is a little bit taller of a playthrough. You're insulated in that anything that changes hands between the kings assassinating and playing with each other, it's going to bring you into their fold. So you will have some form of insulation across one, if not all three of the kings, and however that shakes itself out. So you can afford to build up, kind of lay the groundwork using your super high intrigue, and eventually lash out however you want. And this is, of course, a very strong 1-2 for Portugal. This is going to be an easy southern shot for you because you own the majority of the portions you need for the northern portion of Portugal. You just go all the way down now. So I like this one because it gives you a nice way to play tall and have a lot of insulation and not feel the need to expand quickly, while also getting a lot of fun into the intrigue and all the kind of subterfuge that's already going to be going on between the three crowns here of, I guess, 4 crowns. Navarra is part of Jimena. part of this whole system. It's a lot of fun. Moving back to an Islamic character, we have the Count of Yaiyan. Now this guy starts with a claim to the Taifa of Garnata. And this allows him for a nice, really strong early expansion and the ability to then eventually try to take Cordoba itself. So you have the ability to do this, and when you start with 600 military, you're not that far off from this guy's 1,000. So securing a nice, strong alliance that is close by allows you to really push this southern expansion very easily. Now, some things to kind of contend with is the fact that you are a count. Getting this Taifa title will allow you to become independent of your Taifa overlord, which is nice, but your character himself is not that amazing. His stats are mediocre, his traits are okay, and even your son is kind of falling into the same suit. So it's really going to be about playing through the early portions of this, building up a little bit of momentum to then move south, and after that set up your future generations for expansion and for like a stronger future, because your characters right now are just not incredible. You are only 28 though, and you are unmarried, so this allows you to at least secure a strong wife to then help build out more children, because you do not have any right now. Your current player heir is your nephew. So this is the nice thing, is that it's not your direct son, it's just your nephew. So this has the groundwork for a really strong future. You just kind of have to play these first initial years very smart so that you can really blow out from this southern portion of Iberia. Moving south, we have the Almoravids. Now, historically speaking, in 1086, the Almoravids came to the aid of the Taifas, who are beset on all sides by, well, not all sides, but mainly from the north, by King Alfonso VI, one of the players you can start as. Now, the Almoravids took the majority of the southern portion of Iberia for themselves. They saw themselves as a more Puritan portion of Islam, and technically the way that that's all kind of split up, it's a very kind of interesting distinction between Ash'ari and Muwahhidism. But either way, playing as this is a great way to become an interloper into the clash, into the fates of Iberia. And it is a lot of fun because you have a huge army and you have a lot of ways to just kind of expand through this quickly and push yourself, force yourself into all this region, which will not share your culture or your religion. If you take a look at this, we're looking at Muwahhidism versus Ash'ari. So you're going to be dealing with a lot of opposition there. But since you are already such a strong character, your character itself is level 30, is only 30 years old. So he's got a lot of life ahead of him. He's also a great military general and combatant. So this is definitely an uphill battle, but you have the resources to do it. And I think that playing as this allows you to play as a large, somewhat cohesive clan government, because the new clan government does have new contracts and everything like that, and expand and take up a ton of Iberia, kind of reliving this southern expansion of the Almoravids into Iberia. And I think this is a great one if you want a larger empire to play that doesn't really have to deal with the contention between these three crowns, and you don't want to play as France moving in. This is a really, really, really great, and I think it's a really strong, challenging one for playing as an interloper into Iberia. All right, my pick here for 1066 hardest starting location is Al-Magrit. Now, this is a simple count, but you are the brother to the ruling Taifa, right? And this allows you to have a lot of claims. Now, these claims, unlike your nephew here, are pressed claims. These are all implicit, meaning they'll only transfer to the son if the father has them upon death. So you are up against a wall. You are not necessarily surrounded by friends, so that's not fun. And on top of it, you don't really have an expansion outside of this type, outside of this realm. So you're going to have to either eat up any smaller vassals like this, directly contend with the son, or try to build up more and more momentum, get some stronger allies to try and just push your claim to the entire Taifa itself. Now, this I think is a harder one too, because you start in a very funky location. Culturally speaking too, you are not Andalusian, you're Baranus yet again. So you have a lot to contend with, and the Iberian or I'm sorry, not Iberian, the Spanish kingdoms above you are going to start picking up momentum fast. So you have to get out of the way or expand quickly. And the fact that you're 41 means that you really are up against a wall of time, because you need to get a heir going as fast as possible, marrying someone who is fecund or something of the sort to pump out kids as fast as you can. And your character also is kind of not great. So considering all these things, it makes for a very, very challenging playthrough where you can't just easily kind of snatch up land and become large. You have to really kind of piece your way together and deal with all the adversity ahead of you. Okay, and for a quick honorable mention, we'll talk about the man we all got to talk about anytime you talk about this location, Rodrigo the Campeador de Vivar. Now this is El Cid is another way to look at him, and he is not a landed character at the beginning of the game. In fact, historically speaking, El Cid didn't even take land until much later into his life when he owned portions of Valencia. And the only way to do this is to start as King Sancho and give away stuff. So you have to right click on him, grant him titles, and you would give him, let's just, for the sake of the video, give him this. And then I would press escape and switch character to Count Rodrigo. It's the only way you can play him, but I know a lot of people love this character, myself included. He's one of my favorite historical characters from this era, and I think it's really fun to play as him because look at him. He is a brick shithouse. He's even got a lot of diplomacy and a good amount of stewardship for a character that is an absolute murderer on the battlefield. So if you do want to play as El Cid, that is how you would pull it off, and I figured that would be a fun little honorable mention since you can't just simply select him and press start as this character. With that, it brings our video here to a close. So hopefully now you have 10 or well 11 starting options to choose from when you're booting up Fate of Iberia. And maybe you have some other ideas for the hardest 1066 playthrough that you really think beats out the one that I talked about. Go ahead and let it be known in the comments section below. Shout out some really fun playthroughs that you would really like to try or you really think would be great with this new DLC launch. There's so many options on the table. You don't have to play someone that starts as a character in the conflict. You can start as a character outside and become an interloper. That's why I wanted to give you guys 2 examples of fun interlopers that give you a nice, strong starting platform to enjoy the conflict while also not feeling like you're just kind of racing against getting beaten out. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, all that fun action, but have a good one and take care.